Welcome everyone to the meeting of the Finance Committee on January 30th, 2024. Roll call. Councillor Wilsey has joined us virtually. I understand, Councillor Wilsey, if necessary, you've given your proxy to Councillor Derbyshire if there are any technical issues. So, and hopefully you can hear us okay today. Someone to approve the agenda. Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. Are there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are 4 documents in front of us. Has someone to make a motion to receive those 4 documents? Deputy Mayor McGuire, second by Councillor Kennis. All in favor? Carried. And I can tell they fixed the sound. So today we're looking at the engineering department budget. Before I turn it over to Director Strauss, sorry, I was thinking two steps ahead. At the end, remember folks, this is the first go around at this particular budget. We will be coming back to it, but at the end what we'd like to get is some kind of clear direction to staff. If there are items that you'd like out or something added in, or takeaway for Director Strauss and staff as clear direction. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Director Strauss, if you want to, or Director Dakin, whoever wishes to speak, to give an overview of the budget.
Yeah, thank you, and to Council, thank you, Chair. To Council, just a few housekeeping items, and I'll turn Jake loose. Just a reminder that this week is our last, so we're in the process of processing all the 23 expenses. This is the last round, so on Thursday the checks will be cut for that, so those numbers will then be finalized for the 2023 year end. So the next round of documents that you see, so we have one more meeting next Monday afternoon, I believe it is. So that will still be the old documents, we'll call them, the documents you currently have in front of you, the current documents, but we'll be updating, we've already started updating some of those so that the next round, which starts mid to late February, those numbers will be updated. And just as the Chair has pointed out, the purpose of today is to try and get through the budget, but what we're looking for is any hard no's, so, and some direction if there's stuff that needs to get added. So that's setting the table, and I'll turn it over to Director Strauss.
Director Strauss.
Thank you, through the chair. So I'm going to start with the capital budget. So on that last tab of the agenda has the proposed 2024 and then the 2023 carryover, just so that we're on the same page. And I'll start. So the very first item, so the first 5 items are engineering related. So just an overview of all the projects, whether they're design or construction. They will be designed to the municipal standards, so that they will include street lights, sidewalk, curbs, new asphalt, and then restoration, that anything that's required to accommodate our current design standards. So the Scott Street West design and reconstruction, that is proposed between, it's a small project, so that's why we're proposing a design and a reconstruction. It wouldn't take long to design. This is between Milner and McKellar Street.
Just a moment, Jake. Just tell us what page you're on, because we got a lot of.
Oh, I'm on the. If you're on the agenda, I am on the 4.4, and I'm in the proposed 2024 section.
4.4.
On the agenda, the last,
That last
4.4 capital carry forward in 2024.
And what page, sorry? Or there's just
It-
one page?
I think
It's just one page.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
It'll still be somewhere else.
Everyone got a place? Okay.
So just for color references, there's a solid green line that goes across the Excel page there, and I'm right below that.
Oh, thank you.
For Scott Street West design and reconstruction.
Got it. Thank you.
So as I was saying, the engineering items, everything would be upgraded to our current standards. So the Scott Street West design and reconstruction, because it's such a small portion between Milner and McKellar, we're proposing for both design and reconstruction in this year. The purpose of this really, there is an agreement that was had or signed some years ago. And really it was a promise to the one resident that owns a vacant parcel that we would service their property with a sanitary private drain connection. And that resident has taken action and wants that agreement completed. So that is why this is brought forward. And then do you want me just to keep rolling?
Yeah, just go through, yeah,
Okay.
go through.
Just stop me. And, okay, so the next one is Beach Street design between Adelaide and McKellar. I guess that is Beach Street entirely. This is just the design. Beach Street, we have had a history of complaints. There is no storm sewers. When McKellar Street was designed, it was actually provided adequate capacity to service all of Beach Street. There is a couple development proposals or redevelopment proposals for the Women's Resource Center coming forward, if they haven't already. It's in the process, and this design would just accommodate that with construction to continue on in a later year. The next item is Queen Street reconstruction. So this is the last.
Quick question.
Sorry, yes?
On McKellar, because I remember having on beach, a conversation, because somebody was doing a fourplex there and we said sidewalks, correct? So sidewalks will be part of that on beach?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
So,
If you have questions, just jump in, put your hand, and we'll go to it. Yep.
So just to recap, so every project within this engineering line, the first 5 lines, they will all have at least one sidewalk per side, street lights, curbs, gutters, new infrastructure. Okay, so Queen Street, Phase 2, it's the last piece of Queen Street. This is Strathroy. It's essentially the project is from the tracks all the way to the outlet of the Sydenham. The project would go to Metcalf Street. There's a small piece on Metcalf Street that would be reconstructed, and then it would finish off down Arthur Street, and then it has to go through a residential property, and staff have already engaged with that resident, and we've already started negotiations for an easement over that land to put a head wall out at the river.
Yep. Councilor Pelkman.
So that portion of Queen Street, does that include any side streets?
Steve, your microphone, please.
Sorry, that portion of Queen Street, does that include any side streets like down?
Yep.
Oh.
You know what we're gonna do? Just jump right in.
Okay.
Don't wait for me, just jump right in so we can.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Pelkman, what we would do is we would stub out the streets, so they would be into the apron of those side streets, but we would not be going down those side streets at this time.
And did that design include a subsurface drain underneath to try and lower the water table?
It did, yes. Yeah.
And
It does.
and so likewise then trying to think of the street name that's on the back side of the fire hall. Would it also include a stub for that, so that whenever that street is redone, it would drain into that, the stormwater would drain into that as well?
Yes, so that's Center Street East.
Center
I believe.
East Center, yeah.
East Center, sorry, yes, and yes, it will.
Because
Yes.
that street's, I know, in deplorable condition and it needs to be rebuilt at some point soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the whole need now for the Queen Street north piece is when we did the south piece, the idea was to have that south piece pick up from the north and continue on to the Sydenham. There is a development called Fieldcrest that is to the east of Old Queen Street on the south side of the tracks, and this north piece of Queen Street is the dependability for the outlet of stormwater for that development. Currently they're tied into English Street, which goes up to Caradoc Street, and that drain is at capacity. So that's kind of the need now project. The next one is Oxford Street and Richmond Street. It's actually a redesign. Or not a redesign, but we're completing the design. It started back in 2010 and up to 2012. And then the project kind of just stopped for I don't know which reason, but we have had some water main breaks. We have water main that's in water main and other infrastructure approaching the 100-year mark in there. So from a life cycle renewal standpoint, we'd like to get this cleaned up and then reconstructed in the short term. But this is just for the design for right now. And the next one is Saxton Road redesign and reconstruction. Saxton Road, it's going to be from Carroll Street up to just past Collins Way to the extent of the last house on Collins Way, right near the golf course. And this project was designed originally, but it wasn't to an urban standard. So it's just a small minor redesign where we're going to add street lights, we're going to extend the sidewalk all the way from Carroll. I know it currently goes down and cuts off just past the Strathroy Crossings Plaza. This will bring it over to and connect into that subdivision of South Grove. And also along with this, I'm gonna jump down right now to, where is it on here? It's third from the bottom. It's the Strathroy Crossings drain installation. This project is in tangent with that project. So the Strathroy Crossings drain, which you'll see on the February 5th agenda for consideration, is going to be a new drain underneath Saxton Road, which accommodates two large developments on the east side. One is the existing South Grove, and one is a vacant land right now, but proposed for future development, which is in our settlement boundary. So that will pick up the storm flows from both of those sites, because we don't permit development without a hard piped outlet, and then just relying on infiltration. So these will pick up that a portion of the road construction for drainage, and then it'll also accommodate all of the properties that are not developed in the Strathroy Crossings Plaza, and it will go underneath underneath Adelaide Road. It'll pick up two parcels that are proposed for future development right now, and then it'll eventually outlet into the Trout Creek tributary.
Okay, Councillor Hippel had a question. Jake?
Thank you. So obviously this is a big one in my area, and so there's tons of flooding, and so when you're doing those types of things together and you're putting the sidewalks in, are you you said you're going to extend it from the side that is already on, where it's by Strathroy Crossings, and it kind of stops right at Twin Elm. So we've got on the other side, where Collins Way and South Grove is, where all the kids are waiting for buses and stuff. So we're going to put them on the other side, right? Is that right?
Yes, so actually, sorry, I might have misspoken there. So we are gonna pick up the sidewalk so that it'll basically go from Carroll Street to Collins Way. So it is going to, right now it's proposed to cross the road, actually where the sidewalk terminates. We'll put a little jut to cross and a crosswalk as part of that design. And then it'll be on the east side of Saxton all the way up to those properties and that new development. And then eventually, once that other development at the southeast corner of Saxton and Carroll Street comes forward, we would have that developer pay for sidewalks to extend to Carroll.
One more.
Yep. Follow up.
So just to follow up, and actually this is about the drainage. So where Caradoc Sands is, they've got quite a bit of water that sits for quite some time, and so will that affect the drainage that your the storm water management that you're doing with Collins Way and all that area down there? Will that, is that going to help that? I'm not sure, because you said it went kind of right up to the last house and they're past that.
Yes, so through the whole Strathroy Crossings drain, we're actually working with the developer of South Grove as well, and we're cleaning up their I'll call it the storm issues currently on site. And as part of that, this Strathroy Crossings drain is accommodating those flows, which will help that golf course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I just had a quick one, Jake. The Saxton Road redesign, is that the complete cost, 3.2, or was there a carryover from another year? That's a complete
No, so
cost.
that is the complete cost. The redesign is very minimal. It was almost ready for tender, but it wasn't quite to our design standards. So that cost is kind of blended in with the Strathroy Crossings drain work, because there's going to be drainage work underneath. Saxton Road actually doesn't require any new sanitary or water. It was updated less than 10 years ago. So it's adequate. We've checked the sewers and everything.
So,
And
yeah, so that's the difference between it and Queen Street. Queen Street
Yes.
needed all, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll jump down to, or sorry, I guess I'll back up to, I'll go to the ES, so that's environmental services. So this is everything with water, wastewater. Everything in ES is funded through user fees and not taxation. So the very first one is SCADA upgrades. So that's our controllers for all of our water, wastewater units. And it says eliminate Bristol. So if I can give you an analogy to help with this, imagine you had a VHS system at home to watch TV on. Well, it's very hard to find a technician nowadays to fix that VHS. You're almost cheaper to go with a smart TV or Blu-ray or anything kind of upgraded from that. So we do have some of these old Bristol boards, and that's what we're looking to improve. And we'll be proposing SCADA upgrades every year on an annual basis, because that is our main controller of all of our systems, and that's how we make sure everything is compliant. So the next one is water meter reading equipment. So this is just the piece of equipment that we use. Our staff go around and collect the meter reads once a month. And the equipment right now is reaching the end of its life cycle, and this is something we want to have in advance rather than, oh, it doesn't work today and we're not reading meters. So this is one that is just a life cycle replacement cost. The typical meter reading system can last about 5 years, and then it's recommended to be replaced. This third one is sludge hauling. So this is an annual program that we've been doing. It's to clean out our lagoons in Strathroy. So all of our sludge head stockpiles into our lagoon, and then historically we have not been cleaning it out, and we started this program about 3 years ago. So we just set a tender price that the max rate or the max fee that we pay is $300,000, and we put it out for what quantity you can take out, and then award it to the best bidder. And there is timelines, and then they go ahead, come in, and then they land apply it. The contractor is responsible for all of the environmental constraints on their end, and they have to be fully licensed and whatnot. The next one is refurbishing pumping stations, so the construction of McNabb. We actually did a deeper assessment with our consultant, and the price of 1.25 million, I'm actually slashing that and putting it to 700,000. So you'll see that on the next.
FaceTime video.
Sorry. Sorry, I had my phone on.
So you'll see that on the next pass of the budget item that we've reduced it to 700,000. And then in the short-term solution, we're doing building repairs, our logistics replacement, and then a backup generator is the recommendation out of that. For the Mount Bridges Reservoir, this one will be removed from the 2024 budget. We're going to defer it to 2025 because we're currently doing the master plan for servicing. And out of that master plan, that'll really give us the meat and potatoes of what we need to actually do for that project. We do believe that we have to do an expansion of some sort, but that'll come out in that master planning document. So we're deferring that till 2025. The next one is copper services on Darcy Drive. You'll notice this is a repeat from last year. We actually tendered for $40,000 was the approved budget, and we had no submissions on the close. We followed up with contractors on why they didn't close, and the feedback was that $40,000 doesn't look appetizing. So we have now doubled the fee, carried over that 40 to make 80, and we're hopeful that that can actually replace most, if not all, the services that are remaining that have copper services. And the reason why we're replacing those copper services is because we've had at least 2 leaks over the past couple of years consecutively, and it of course requires an emergency repair that is bubbling at the surface. So we just want to be ahead of the preventative maintenance and having that emergency deployment. So we're recommending to replace these services. It's not as invasive as like a full reconstruction. Most of it is done either on the side of the water main, or we can drill it over to the other side and save the asphalt surface and minimal impact to properties.
Councillor Hipp.
It may sound like a silly question because you kind of explained it, but when I first read this, I thought, what the heck is copper services and what does it do and why do we need that? So, I mean, it was just kind of, I mean, you obviously explained some of it, but I mean, copper, it's, yeah.
Yes, it still is a common plumbing method. However, we don't allow copper to be used in underground infrastructure for the municipality. We prefer PEX material, so it's a plastic material. It doesn't fluctuate with compaction or weather. The copper services have just been slipping and leaking, and I don't know the exact reason why, but they have caused us issues. So. The next one is pump spares. So this is just a capital item to put more spare parts on our shelf, and then in the event of emergency, it's really just replacing that inventory that we have been using in the past, and then having something in the event of an emergency. Sometimes we are waiting like 6 to 12 weeks on parts, and when we need them in a hurry, it's important to have on our shelf. Next one is so this is a larger one, but relocation of the Mount Bridges waste transfer station. So this is to do an ECA and the design. The current transfer station's at our Mount Bridges current wastewater treatment facility site on Mill Road. It's not really ideal to have your waste transfer station at one of your facilities. We do have what I would consider a very valuable piece of land next to our public works yard in Mount Bridges that we're proposing as the location. However, that's not finalized or anything. We would still need to go through the whole ECA process and undertake a design and see if that's feasible. But with design upgrades that we're proposing, we are into the current spot where we store leaves on the site at the Mill Road transfer station, and when we go to do the construction of that facility, there's going to be some restrictions and access. So there is the opportunity to relocate it. I'm not recommending it, but we could dispose of that as well and just have the one site on Pike Road. So that's what that item's for. The last one on environmental services is the long-range financial plan.
One thing, Councillor Wilsey, you had a question?
Yeah, just we're doing the ECA on another location. I'm just wondering if we should be looking at, if we're talking about building a new fire hall, buying land in Mount Bridges for a fire hall, which might do this, what is the value of doing the ECA at this location if we're already in talks in other departments about doing an ECA to put a works yard with a new fire hall, maybe outside of town or somewhere different? I think maybe we should just put a pin in that one and have some more discussion before we approve the $200,000 to do an ECA on a site that we may never build on because we're looking at someplace different already.
Okay. Just a note in general to everybody, if you know, rather than just discussion, if somebody wants to make a motion to remove something or further discussion, if it's a hard no, have that discussion now rather than wait to the end. So, you know, if council wants to have a discussion about that particular item or any item, bring it up to Councillor Pelkman.
So I do agree with Councillor Wilsey that, because I believe I had mentioned it in a previous meeting, that if we're looking at multiple departments having to move stuff, it would be smart to do it all together. However, I definitely do not want to give the impression to any resident in the Mount Bridges area that we would be considering not having a transfer station in there. So I just want to make that crystal clear to anybody in Ward 2 that I think maintaining a transfer station in Ward 2 is essential.
Director Strauss.
Thank you. And by no means did I select a location there. I was just saying there is a location that we currently own and it's not really used. There's a fire training facility beside it, but there's currently a vacant area between the public works yard and that fire training facility.
Councillor Derbyshire.
I guess, I'll turn this on. I guess then I'll put on the motion to remove this from the 2024 budget.
Yeah. Seconded Councillor Brenner, a question.
I'll second again on the floor if I can
Okay,
make a
second,
comment.
then go ahead, make your, yep. Second,
I'm not opposed to the motion. We could also consider just putting 200,000 aside for such time as, and put it towards a fund that would do exactly what Councillor Pelkman was talking about. In other words, an interdepartmental initiative to take a look at lands that could be used for municipal services in Ward 2, such as a waste transfer station and or a fire station, those sorts of things. Just that if we're looking at having a package of land to do several things for the municipality at one location, it might be that we just say, okay, if that day comes and we're doing it, here's 200,000 from this department to go with the waste transfer station idea. That could help defray the cost of the whole project. But I'm not opposed to the motion. I just want to put out this idea that we could also combine it with something that Councillor Pelkman had suggested.
Councillor Pelkman.
My question is what might happen in the short term. So we know that the Environment Ministry passed our interim solution for the Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facility. So what happens to the transfer station while that work is being completed?
So that, through the chair to Councillor Puckman, so that work for the interim solution won't have a drastic impact on the operation of the waste transfer station. We'll probably construct some fencing, but there will be more foot traffic going in and out. It shouldn't really impact. I'm hopeful that we're not working there on Saturdays.
Any other questions, follow-up? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to move this item from the budget. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. I got you, Greg. I saw it. Yep.
Sorry, I thought you had a question. So the next one, or the last one of environmental services, is our long-range financial plan. So that's to establish our user fee rates for the next, they do it for 10 years, but we're mandated through the Safe Drinking Water Act that we have to undertake this study every 5 years. So that, if I can say, that is a kind of a must have on the capital. Okay, so I'm going to jump down to roads to finish off our budget talk for capital. So tar and chip. So tar and chip, we usually don't actually have the roads established until that spring after that winter frost. Tar and chip is a thin layer of emulsion and compressed chip, and sometimes it doesn't hold properly or some frost heat happens. One road that we do have identified for this year as a need is Amiens. It's the entirety of the portion that we take care of. So it's from Middlesex Center's Lamont Drive up until Hickory at our end. And then other.
I'll just ask a question. So Amiens, is every possible road other than, I get them mixed up in Session Road or side roads, tarred and chip? I know this year we did Innadale and Union. Apart from Amiens, are there others that need to be completed? Gravel roads that should be tarred and chip?
That should be converted? Sorry, is that the question?
Converted from gravel to tarred and chip.
I guess there's none that are I'll call it pressing. There's not really a magical number. I used to use in past, if you had more than 500 vehicles a day, you're likely not keeping up with your gravel road maintenance, and you're gonna have potholes started every single day, and you're just throwing graders on the road full time. And at that point, I would recommend at minimum to upgrade that road to a hard surface, but there's none that are even close to that threshold at this moment.
So the last one then is Amiens, that's because we did,
It's not
Oh,
gravel.
no.
It's not gravel.
it's not gravel?
Amiens isn't gravel.
Sorry, Amiens is actually currently a tar and chip surface, but just the pavement condition index is deteriorating, and it is a class 3 road, so there's a lot more vehicles that travel along Amiens than in Innadale, for instance.
Okay.
So we've staff have set that as a priority for 2024.
Okay, Councillor Hippel?
So the portion that we're doing, is Middlesex Center gonna be doing the rest of it then? Like this in their capital?
They actually just did the south piece that they maintained last year.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Derbyshire?
When are we leveling this road? Or are we gonna leave it crowned like this? Like it's a mess, to be honest with you. It's not just chip it up and put tar down, like it. it's crowned to where it's almost dangerous.
So after the spring frost heave, we're gonna assess that, and there may be sections, it may be a full pulverize and redo. I don't know at this point, but I do understand the surface is not just a straight 2% crossfall. It's, it does have some wheel ruts, and so we'll assess that further at that point. And then once this, if this is left on the agenda, on the budget, then we would come back in the spring with our recommended roads, and then it would be open for council to hack and slash at that point.
Okay, follow up, Councilor Derbyshire, then Councilor Palmer.
My next question on that will be from, I don't even know what theirs is, but anyways, down through Skinner's Dip, you know, where it becomes wide and narrow, and obviously that is beginning to come off of Glen Guile down and around, is beginning to become almost like a highway. Will we do something there, or like aside from chip and tar, is it being looked at to be transformed at any point to wider, better?
It's that's something we can consider once we get to that. When you say better, are you referring to like an asphalt upgrade or?
Yeah, like I think we're kind of getting to the point, if you probably did the traffic count there, it'd be crazy. Like it's really being used far more as now an outlet to kind of bypass things. I just would hate to go and spend money on chip and tar and then find out that, you know, in 2 years, the county says, look, we got to do something here because this is getting crazy.
So as part of our spring assessment, we will be doing traffic counts, and we'll certainly make sure that anything like, even like ditching and anything that needs to be done prior to, we would do that in advance. Our tar and chip, we usually do the assessment, have everything planned in spring, and then we don't do it till about the fall timeline, just because it does kick up a lot of dust at the first application. Residents usually think that we turned it to a gravel road, and then once we can let it settle and compact, we will then sweep the road, and it usually becomes a good surface then.
Councilor Palmer?
Okay.
Okay, just, I guess as a follow-up to that, because the next part was asked about the Glen Oaks and the Sutherlands. Is there ever on the horizon to tar and chip those? Because I know we're away, and I'm always getting, as Councilor Derbyshire probably can attest to, the state of those gravel roads. So jumping ahead, but I'm gonna ask that we increase in the operating budget, the amount of times that those roads are graded in lieu of, in the near future, doing tar and chip on those roads. Anything else? Oh, Councilor Canis.
Just want to go back to Amiens. Since it straddles two municipalities, maybe even three, maybe even part of it is Adelaide, Metcalf, is it something that we could ask the county to look at turning it into a county road? Because there is a lot of traffic. I know I use that to sort of get to London quicker myself. So there is, I think, more and more people doing that. So.
The county does do, I think it's every 5 years, they do a road assumption study. So they usually present to us what their findings are. I don't think we're at that traffic volume at this moment, but I think one that might be more pressing that could be considered to the county is Parkhouse Drive between Mount Bridges and Glendon. That traffic count has been excuse me, that traffic count has been increasing, and then we are proposing development to come forward in Mount Bridges. So that might be a candidate that goes first, but by all means, that's certainly up to the council if you choose that. That does give them more taxes, just so we're aware. Okay. So municipal drainage works, the road share. So anytime the council approves a municipal drain project, usually in the financials, there's an item that the municipality would be assessed a split share. Historically, this just sits on the drain ledger and then is paid for through reserves, and I'm kind of like, okay, paid for through reserves. That's not, we're just bringing this out to let the council know this is a cleanup of all the reserves. It's fairly hard to put a budget item forward for this, because you never know who's coming forward with the drain request, and you can't really deny the request, but this is just this is the roads portion, so there's probably culverts involved under the road or ditching. And we've had quite a cleanup of drain items over the years that we're just bringing forward. So this is going to be an annual item on the capital budget for cleanup. Okay, next is asphalt repaving. Right now, again, I'm gonna actually skip to the very bottom. We're proposing a roads need study. So that is a third-party consultant. It's recommended to do every 5 years for your municipality. So they assess every single one of your roads, and then they give you the recommendations on what roads to replace. Because of the timing, that likely won't fall for this year, but we should be doing asphalt repairs each year. And as of last fall, we have a couple, 2 roads in specific that the PCI index is almost non-existent. And they're both on the west end of Strathroy, so Westgate Ave and Lamantia. We also have some municipally owned parking lots that we're looking to pave as well. One is just at the end of, it's across the end of Frank Street at, we call it Marijuana for Trauma building right behind there, but
Oh, yeah.
it's right at the CN tracks.
Yeah.
And it's just off of Metcalf Street. Municipal staff and potentially councillors used that lot. It's a gravelled surface while we were redoing our back town hall parking lot. We also own another parking lot right behind a lot of businesses. It's kind of between Center Street, Frank Street, and Front Street, and it's in the back alley of each. It's just a smaller square portion, but the parking lot is in absolutely horrible shape. So that would be part of this program as well. And there will be a couple stormwater repairs along with that parking lot upgrade. Moving on to sidewalks. So sidewalks, we also determined at the traffic committee, there's been a recommendation for sidewalks being proposed for Dell Street as one. We do get a lot of requests for Mount Bridges. However, we don't want to be putting sidewalks down a road that we're potentially going to rip up. So we are just in the queue right now waiting for the master plan to come forward of what roads are going first. And then from there, if there's roads within Mount Bridges that we're not proposing, let's just say for the next 20 years, or I'm just making timelines up at this moment, but then we could look at putting sidewalks down those roads or increasing, I'll call them concrete beaten paths, because they're not the same width of a regular AODA sidewalk. So there's also going to be sidewalk repairs involved with this capital project or capital item as well. That again would come back to council once the roads are recommended. Sorry.
Yep, so question for me. There's an assessment you do on the sidewalks, correct? What is the name of that assessment again?
We just do an annual.
Is it a visual check?
It is a physical walkthrough. So last year we hire an EPW co-op student, and the co-op student looks for cracks, any deteriorations, like tripping hazards, anything that's not AODA compliant. So that's the 1.5 meter wide, and everything is documented. We're actually mandated through the minimum maintenance standards to do that every single year.
So I just got to follow up, Councilor Hippel. So could you ask, and no conflict here, ask them to walk the sidewalks in Melbourne? I don't know if they have, but I know there are some there that are crumbling. And then second part, are we looking at ever doing sidewalks in Campbellville?
That is certainly up for the council discussion if you'd like. And like I said, there is no concrete, we're doing that street right now. That will come forward and the council can make that decision at that point.
Councilor Hippel, sorry.
No, that's okay. I actually was gonna ask about Melbourne as well, but I was kind of chuckling because I was looking at the number going, and not that I want to increase any number before anyone yells at me, but I looked at it and went, whoa, that is not enough money for sidewalks, especially when I know that the areas just specifically in Mount Bridges aren't compliant at all, except for the new subdivisions. So anyways, I kind of went, I wonder which ones we're gonna do. So that was it.
Keep it turned off. So you'll see the sidewalk budget has slowly increased by $10,000 increments each year. Melbourne is not AODA compliant. So I'm gonna move on to the bridges and culverts. So there's two items. The first one is, it's actually for Glen Oak, and Glen Oak is a complete, it's called a culvert, but it's actually a bridge. It's a concrete bridge right at the north end. It's right on a very terrible S-bend on Glen Oak, and part of that, we're gonna be looking to straighten out the bend and replace that culvert completely. It has a very low BCI rating, and I will just say, if it is not passed through council, we'll be reducing the load restrictions on that road, just from a safety perspective. And then the Century Drive C17 is just a repair done to that culvert. So the next one is, this is actually a bridge on Westminster. We own it jointly with Middlesex Center. That's the border between us and Middlesex Center. The repairs are actually already completed, and Middlesex Center just went ahead. We do have an agreement to share the cost through, so they have proposed the $187,500. They're just holding the invoice at this moment, waiting for us to approve, and I kept telling them, we don't have budget approval, you might not get funding, I can't promise, so that's why this item is on here. The repairs have already been completed.
That's weird.
Railway crossing maintenance, so each year we propose, or we have been proposing $60,000 for the railway. So the railway isn't responsible for their right-of-way, however, they don't usually put the money aside for a roadway. So when they go ahead with their rail improvements, such as replacing the inner boards on their rail, they also look to replace the outside, and because they disturb some of our road surface, they replace just as much as a paver width can complete. So this money is really to extend that pavement width all the way out to the property limits. So whenever we need to upgrade the road and have a smoother surface over the tracks, we don't need to call them for flagmen or anything. So really it's kind of invest now and save later. There's two sections which I've been discussing with both CN and CP recently, is Christina Road. There's two crossings over Christina, and they've been having a lot of maintenance done to them, and they continuously have potholes present. So that's what I'm hopeful that they'll move forward with those. Sometimes they strap our hands and they don't move forward with things, such as last year they didn't move forward. So it's proposed for Christina Road, and I've had ongoing consultation with both rail authorities. Lost my place. Oh, street lighting program. So the street lighting program is an annual program. We're actually replacing, from a liability standpoint, we have old street lights called pole trans. They're pole transformers. They're concrete bases. The concrete is not structurally sound anymore, and we do have some remaining in Strathroy. They're on Drury Lane on the north side and the adjacent side roads that attach the cul-de-sacs. So you'll see larger bases on these poles. They are the old lights, and Integris, who's doing the work, is going to be coming in, actually putting in the green box transformers and then a regular street light that meets our standards. So that's proposed. The Strathroy Crossings drain maintenance is, I kind of already touched on it, but it is the Saxton Road through the Strathroy Crossings Plaza under Adelaide Road. It provides an outlet to every property that is not developed right now, except for South Grove. They're not quite completed their development, so it does include outlet for them. This project is fully DC funded, so you will see this come forward for consideration on this Monday coming up. And there's a lot of parties involved. We've had lots of discussion. This is the largest drain project we've had, I think, in Strathroy-Caradoc history. So it's very exciting to kind of see that one.
So, Director, I just want to ask, so South Grove, is this going to help alleviate, would this help alleviate the flooding problems there and hopefully accelerate the assumption of that subdivision?
So I don't want to put a promise, but it should. it's actually giving a hard piped outlet. Right now, they just rely on infiltration that's buried under their curbs, and they don't have a hard piped outlet anywhere, so it's just on-site storage. So this will give them that relief. We did find an overflow release drain, but currently it's outletting into that 5th phase that's undeveloped. So that will need an actual outlet destination, and through the discussions with the developer, South Grove will be installing a stormwater management pond on site as well. That's proposed up near Saxton Road with those couple lots that are not going to be developed as houses.
So a hard maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The next.
Great.
Yep, sorry, Councilor Cannon.
Just a comment
I
on
was
this,
writing my notes.
on this one, we've heard about this water issue. I mean, it really affects the whole south end of Strathroy, so, it comes up almost every time we talk about some new development or something going on out there, so, certainly, if anything needs to be done, I think this is one of them, so.
Thanks.
So the next one is a stormwater management facility clean out. I'll just say it, we haven't really done any stormwater management facility clean outs. You should clean your pond out roughly every 10 years. There's a lot of sand sediment and buildup, overgrowth, invasive plants, and wonderful things that happen in a stormwater management facility. This is just to start that program and have annual ponds cleaned out. We do now, in our assumptions of developers, we require the developers to actually do the pond assessment and clean out their pond if it's needed before we assume it. So that at least buys us another 10 years before we'd have to consider that. And then lastly, I already did kind of briefly note the roads need study. So that'll be a third-party consultant who does the study on our roads and then puts recommendations, and they have a whole matrix of what roads, what types of restoration needed. So I'll leave it at that, and if there's
Any other questions for Councilor Brennan, then Councilor Palmer?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through you to Director Strauss. The stormwater management facility cleanout, the idea that they're done about maybe approximately every 10 years or so. I'm wondering if it would be possible for a future meeting to have a document that would show maybe what the schedule would be for the next 10 years and what our annual costs would be on that. I don't know how many of these ponds we have, but if I just like to know how many we have and what schedule over the next 10 to 15 years and what's the annual cost going to be if we're looking at having multi-year budgets. That's all. Thank you.
Did you want to make a resolution for that direction?
I don't know if this is just a direction to staff. I'm just thinking this is just something that could be brought to us as.
We'll have a motion.
I'll just make a motion. It would be nice to have a stormwater clean-out schedule for the next 10 to 15 years for our stormwater ponds, and with the approximate annual operating cost of that. I don't know if this is an operating or a capital issue. That's, I think, what I'm getting at.
Someone second that?
I can.
Deputy Mayor, you want to speak to that, did you?
Sorry, I didn't. I should have jumped in. I was just going to say, you will see on the next actual council agenda on Monday, we are bringing forward a stormwater feasibility study. With that study, it has programs identified, and one of the programs identified in there is to do every 5 years a recommended assessment. It's a third-party assessment. They go in, they actually go out on, well, unless technology changes, they go out on like little dinghies or boats, and they check the sediment depths, review what it is compared to the actual design, and then they make a recommendation on what kind of prioritize which needs to be cleaned out first.
Okay. The motion, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Councilor Palmer, you had a question.
Yeah, just looking up, I'm just gonna ask a little bit about the downtown streetscaping. It says here in 2023, we spent $113,000 on design. I don't recall seeing anything.
So on the next council meeting, you're actually going to see, sorry, everything's coming to the next meeting. On the next meeting, you're actually going to see the downtown concepts. And then staff are looking for council's feedback on that, and then we'll start that whole discussion with the BIA, all the business owners, And my goal is to talk to each individual one and get all their feedback, so, and obviously we'll have public meetings as well.
Any other, Councilor Derbyshire?
I just wanted to, well, I'll turn that on. Through you to the director. On the street lighting program, I just saw the year before we taxed 100 and something thousand here. 105,000, and we didn't use any of it as of November 20th. Maybe that will change. Was that for a different, like, a program, or like, should we just have a program kind of set aside, you know, where it's gonna need $50,000 or $60,000 a year and build the kitty that way, or were we kind of going after the same project with the 105 and the one we're doing here?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councilor Derbyshire, so every year we have a plan. So Integris is our electrical authority. They provide us with what their capital proposals are, and then we incorporate it. So they actually did do work last year. It's just, I believe we're doing our final, I don't know what it's called, check run. So that it should be updated, I think, in the next one, unless we haven't received their invoice. But there is work that had been completed in last year that should be on there. I don't anticipate this to be a every single year program. That's why we have it on the cap. We do have some in operating as well that we do, like streetlight maintenance. But once these pole transformers are completely gone, I don't anticipate this program to last past that. And there's just the ones remaining on that kind of southwest end of Strathroy.
Councilor Wilsey has a question. Councilor Wilsey, floor is yours.
Thank you. I've got two questions. One is, I see the cost on here for moving the sludge out of the Strathroy treatment center when we're pumping that out. Are the costs for pumping out the Mount Bridges station to take that extra effluent to Strathroy in operations at the capital? I hadn't seen those in either of them. And then the second question, and just a lot of them together being a lot, hopefully it can be answered together, is when I look at the loans portion, is this what's proposed if we keep it as is? And if we accept this tonight, are we approving to take on this debt, or whether this is just approving to discuss later for the 7.2 million?
I think the first one will be for Director Strauss. Second one will be for Director Dakin, but I could help answer the last one too.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councilor Wilsey, so for the operating, for the sludge management hauling, so the capital program identified in our budget is for hauling sludge out of Strathroy. The transfer of sewage out of Mount Bridges is actually in our operating account, and you'll see it on the under the operating budget under sludge management. Okay. So that was for the Mount Bridges transferring or hauling.
Okay. And Director Dakin, the last one, I think I can help with that. Councilor, we're not approving it tonight. We're just looking at any that we want to take out. I had a question about the loans too, but did you want to help with that one, Director?
Yes, through the chair to Councilor Wilsey. So anything that's in the budget sort of proposed, those are just numbers right now. Obviously, once we go through and look at what we're actually approving, those numbers could change radically or remain the same. So the first pass is this is sort of what's intended. If we were to do all the work, we would obviously need to do some loans. And so this would be one of the projects that would be up for a loan amount. But that gets finalized on the final budget run through.
Okay. Any follow-up, Councilor? I have, Frank, sorry.
Not to move the topic, but there's a lot of carry forward stuff as well. I just wondered, like, and I mean, a lot of them are multi-year projects, especially the wastewater treatment ones, but there's a lot of other ones that looks like they haven't been started or anything like that. Are they still going to happen, or are there any of those things that should be looked at being removed or no longer necessary, or whatever? It's just these long lists. I hate long lists of things that hang around for a long time. So just wondered, if they're all still a go.
Director Strauss.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councilor Canis. So every single one is still a go. We did, usually our engineering department, when we do capital programs, we require a full year, if not more. Last year we didn't approve the budget till 2020, till June. So we kind of lost half of a year there, so we are still cleaning up items, like the CLI, items, a lot of the environmental services ones that you see, they all had a late start. Some of them show no expenses, but we actually have gotten far through those projects. Sometimes the engineers don't actually invoice us till we're quite a substantial way, but we still do need that funding. The only one that's kind of really on hold out of that is the very last item of the carry forward, which is it's Mount Bridges beautification. That is actually going to be contributed towards when we do the downtown revitalization. Mount Bridges is part of that. That's the Adelaide Road portion, and we wanted to put those funds towards planters and like I might be speaking. They're clusters, I think they're called.
We're talking about planters, which we create clusters of planters to be more impactful as opposed to one planter here and then 100 yards later, one more planter. So the idea would be to take those funds, utilize it to create clusters of planters to have more impact and have several of those along the streetscape versus what we currently do, which is sporadic single planter, which is very non-impactful.
Any other questions? Councillor Canis.
The Park House Drive reconstruction, have we let that project, or I can't remember anymore, but I guess where are we in that one?
Sorry, my ear popped when you said that, but I think you said, did we lead that project?
Let
Park
it,
House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are currently working, and Director Huff, you may want to jump in if you want, so we are really waiting on a development project there's a lot of moving pieces to this. We're still working with both developers that are involved, but this project really is a development charge driven project that because we have such a different water course down south for the tributary of where we have to drain water, the province has only allowed us to have one permit to take water out at once, and right now one of the developers has a permit to take water, but we're just working through the development process and buttoning things up between the municipality and the development, and then once that happens, we're in a tender ready position to move forward with Park House. So I don't know when that'll go. I'm hopeful any day now, but we're just kind of in the passenger seat at this point.
Any other questions? Oh,
You go first and then I'll go.
Councillor Derbyshire.
Sorry, I was just probably gonna make a comment that I've heard from a lot of people in Mount Bridges is more of a functioning as opposed to a beautification. Like they really would rather they'd rather probably spend 25,000 on wider sidewalks and an actual function where they don't trip coming off the road. Like sidewalks are, honestly, I can't say it enough how many phone calls I get from Mount Bridges on sidewalks. Just not that people don't want beautiful things, but you know, their big thing is function over kind of beauty, I guess.
I think CAO would like to interject.
Through your worship, and I think council will see with the report that is coming forward next week with the downtown reconstruction project for both Strathroy and Mount Bridges, you'll be able to see the changes that are being proposed that will have a more impactful, there's beautification as part of that reconstruction projects. So you'll see a little bit more next week.
Okay. Councillor Hippel.
So, to our CAO, so will that give us a chance to look at it and maybe make tweaks if perhaps? I only say that because as soon as you said something about planters, I just thought, uh-oh, the whole entire village of Mount Bridges is going to have a fit, because planter is a bad word for that. So will we be able to look at it and say, oh, maybe not, yes, that's good, and et cetera?
Yep. CEO McKibben.
Through the chair, yes, so this is, we're just at the beginning stages. This is the first conceptual coming before council, and with that is sort of here are the infrastructure under the ground must do things. Then here's the list of all of the, might be nice to have, this would look nice, we could do this list. And that list has costs associated with it. There's costs with both. So yes, what's coming forward, the report that's coming forward next week is sort of the first proposal being put forward, looking for council's feedback and direction. And then we can begin to narrow down that focus and then come back and this is like step one of a sort of a multi-step process.
Okay.
So I have a question. Crosswalks. So if I understood correctly, the county has, I don't want to use the word blessed, but okay, as long as we pay for it, that we could put crosswalks on county roads. I'm thinking of 2nd Street out by the high school. I'm thinking of Adelaide Road and Mount Bridges by Lions Park, places like that. Am I correct in that, first of all? I'm going to make a motion, and then, go ahead.
So yeah, through discussions with the county engineer, yes, as long as we have committed the funding, I believe it needs to be a letter directly from the council to the county supporting this, and then we have the committed approved budget. I'm happy to add that in if you'd like, but there is nothing proposed right now.
No, so I have a fault. So the cost, how much is one crosswalk, Director?
So we actually never did receive that invoice, so that invoice
tell
never, but they did put an $80,000 cap on us without having their final invoice, but we are gonna be receiving their final costs with a cap of 80,000. I've been told it was more, so I can't comment on that without seeing that invoice.
I'll open it up to discussion from council. The crosswalks have been, we've heard it from everybody, Strathroy, Mount Bridges especially, and I don't know the number, but if I'm allowed to, I'd like to make a motion to allocate $200,000 towards crosswalks, and we'll go from there. If anybody wants to second it? Is that a seconder, Councilor Pammer? Open it for discussion. Councilor Pelton.
Not opposed to the motion, but just a question. The intersection of 2nd and Head Street, did that not meet the traffic count for stoplights, which would negate
I
the
may have
need for?
misspoke, I meant down by the high school. Is that 2nd and there? That's what I meant, yeah.
Okay. I just wouldn't want to put a crosswalk in when we know we're gonna have stoplights there at some point.
Lights going there,
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Isn't it going there too? Sorry not to jump in.
You wanted to know if stoplights were going in the corner of 2nd and Adair.
I don't think it passed the traffic count.
So as part of the North Meadows secondary plan, once that development gets underway, I believe that's a consideration, but not at this point. I don't think it was recommended. And I think that's the same with 2nd Street and Head Street. We're doing the Head Street design, and we're gonna, as part of our design, we're gonna prepare for that to be changed to a lit intersection. However, that's the county's call at the end of the day, but we're preparing for it.
Councilor Pammer.
So what you're proposing, Chair, is that we just set aside $200,000, but before that money is spent, it would come to us as to which the priority and what you're thinking. Is that my
Yes.
understanding? Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yep. Councilor Brennan.
So to be clear, we're talking about a crosswalk on 2nd Street? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was 2nd Street and Adair by the high school. I'll get the street name wrong. There. And the possibility of one in Mount Bridges on Adelaide by Lions Park.
Yeah, and we're just allocating the funds subject to
approval.
subject to approval and subject to a report on whether any of these intersections would be getting traffic lights in the near future.
Yeah, essentially what I was doing was council just getting the money parked, so when it comes up, because it did last year, we didn't have the funds
Right, so just
available.
parking the money, okay.
Yep. Deputy Mayor.
If I could propose a friendly amendment, Your Worship, that the 200,000 just goes into a fund towards crosswalks, and the reports
I'll accept
can
that.
identify from there.
Yep, I'll accept that. Yeah, I'll accept the friendly amendment. Just parking. Councilor Derbyshire.
Sorry, I just want to ask one more question. Do these have to be manned crosswalks? Okay, so it's not like the one that went out on Glendon,
Yeah.
where they still have a crossing guard that we
Right.
need to find someone for.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I don't.
Yeah, I was gonna ask this.
Okay.
Well,
Councilor Brennan?
To be fair, and I take your point, but we're just parking the money in a crosswalk fund at this point, and that money wouldn't be spent until we'd had discussion of what's going on at those particular crosswalks. In other words, it's just they don't necessarily have to be automated or non-automated. It's just a crosswalk fund that we will access as required, as approved by council in the future. Correct?
Correct, because there are
Okay,
different
yep.
types of crosswalks.
Like there's different types of we just don't want to tie our hands at this
No,
point.
there are
Okay.
different types of crosswalks. Yes.
Okay, just to be clear, and incorporating the friendly amendment that was agreed upon by Mayor Grantham, and just confirming that Councillor Hammer agreed as well as the initial seconder of the motion, to allocate $200,000 toward crosswalks with locations to be determined at a later date, and to ensure that I incorporated your friendly amendment, Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Any other questions of the budget? Director, was there anything in the operating budget that you wanted to highlight?
There's not really anything to go line by line for, so I have drainage, solid waste, public works, water, and wastewater. And pretty well the lion's share, we did a 3% increase over the full department. I guess one item that jumped out was we actually just allocated wages to solid waste appropriately. As there's quite a few staff members, it's just a percentage, I believe it's 5% of 4 staff's wages that got allocated to solid waste to accommodate because the number went up about triple. So that, yeah, actually that's a good point. So that is on the operating page.
Detail 17. Yeah, detail on 17, yeah. And then the summary about 49.
Excuse me.
Sheet you got in front of you.
I'll just go to this one. So, sorry, that is on page 17. And if you draw your attention to admin wages, it's the 4th item from the bottom before total general expenses. So that's just the administrative wages. You'll see it jump from
Councilor Pelkman?
So a question about the transfer stations. So I know there was some Saturdays during leaf season that there was significant backups at the transfer stations, and so I'm wondering if we should be allocating funds to, say, for maybe the last half of October, the first half of November, keep the transfer station open on a Friday as well, so we don't have those huge, it allows those people that are retired and that to bring their leaves on a Friday, as opposed to everybody coming on Saturday and creating the long lineups down whatever that road is, can't think of it right now, Pike. Yep. I know that's a contract issue, that's not our employees, but I'm just wondering if we should be having some thought about opening the transfer station for more time during that season.
Just during leaf season during fall. Councilor Canis?
Just on the solid waste, it may sound like a broken record, but this whole change in the recycling responsibility, does that change anything in our budgets at all, or nothing?
So we, through the chair to Councillor Canis, we did pass 3.1% increase on our overall garbage and recycling. BRA actually sent us the breakdown of those numbers about a week after that event, or that council meeting, and we do have a slight bit of savings out of there. The garbage did go up more than 3%. I think it was six something percent. And then the recycling just dropped off. I think it actually was about 6 right on the dot percent, and then the recycling dropped off. So yes, we kind of broke even, but we will have some funding that we've approved through this expense that goes into reserves at the end.
Any other questions? Councillor Derbyshire.
I'm gonna go back to, I guess, the capital there for 2023. We charged for the railway thing again, $60,000 railway maintenance. And I know maybe it isn't in, but I thought, did we do any last year?
Last year we didn't, so that money would carry forward to this year.
Okay, when we carry, like, is there a kind of rolling fund set aside so that we know we're now at 120 or how, or is it just kind of thrown into a pot?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, so those funds would be allocated for that specific project, so it doesn't just go into the Public Works Reserve, it would go into reserve for those railway crossings. We try and keep those earmarked so that we're not double taxing on those things. So if there's a year when, and as the director pointed out, a lot of that's indicative on when the railway companies come and do their work, because we don't have the ability to sort of do it and then they'll rip it up. So we have to sort of wait for them. So there was some scheduled this year, which apparently didn't happen. So that will be moved into the fund for future years. So there may be a year, for instance, where possibly where they end up doing more and we have the opportunity to catch up. So that money is set aside for those specific purposes.
Councillor Pelkman.
Along that same vein of thought, we had a presentation earlier this year about the condition of the crosswalk in, or the crossing in Mount Bridges, and just wondering if that crossing is on the list of your discussions as well.
Yes, it is actually. That one is tied in with the Mount Bridges beautification project, like the downtown revitalization, and we're proposing to have that completely upgraded because that's more or less just a beaten asphalt path, I guess. The sidewalks don't quite go right up to the rail, and it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. I'm gonna follow up, Director, just my thing about the back roads in Ward 2. So the grading of the back roads and the gravel roads and the cutting of the grass, is that a scheduling issue, a staffing issue, operational issue? Do you have enough money to ensure that those roads are graded and not? So, last year we communicated a few times about the condition of the gravel roads and so what do you need to make sure that can happen?
So that through the chair to the chair, that's kind of a mixed bag. So it's not necessarily a staffing issue or a budgetary issue. It's the weather. Sometimes when we get hammered with rain, the road just turns into, I'll say, soup, and we have to wait for that to drain out. Then we can grade it. It also it's depending on if we do have large trucks that go down the road, impact that. But we do have a regular maintenance schedule that we keep on top of, and we obviously do have staff take vacations, but I don't think it's necessarily a staffing issue.
Councillor Wilsey, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the wastewater and looking at the lines for sludge management and the chemicals lines. And I'm seeing that the cost that we had in 2023 for both of those items both exceeded our 2023 budget, but they're also significantly higher than the 2024 budgets. I'm just wondering if we should adjust that, because if we put those up, that's an extra $100,000 in water, wastewater, almost. I just need to make sure that we're covering those so that we're actually close to what our actuals are going to be. Realized there was a surplus in this department, so we went under on some other things, but I don't want to potentially under budget by $100,000, especially on sludge management.
So through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so So operationally, we made a change in how we do our sludge management, and I'm comfortable with the number that we have proposed, that we won't see that drastic increase of that 252,000 repeated. So we did change our operational process. And then for the chemicals, we can revise that number.
Oh, sorry, what's that?
Page 20?
Right.
That's, just so everybody's on the,
Sorry, yes.
While they're trying to find that, Jake, could you tell us about the operational changes you made? Because I'm just looking at, we budgeted 195,000, we spent 252. And I know this year we're pumping more sludge from Mount Bridges to Strathroy than we did last year. So can you just explain to council how the operational changes are going to result in savings to get us underneath the 2023 budget?
Okay, so through the chair to Councillor Wilsey, so your statement about that we've increased the hauling, we've actually seized the hauling, so there hasn't been any this winter at all. So we have been saving that $5,000 a day. That's the real big change. We're going through the process with the ministry of upgrading our plant. They're happy about the committed funding and they haven't made a comment yet, so.
You said page 20 there, people were looking for the page.
Yeah, I got
Page 20,
Yes.
you have it? Yeah? And Councillor Brennan.
Can I make a request of all people that when they jump from one thing to another, they refer specifically to what document and what page they're looking at? Because we spend half our time scrambling to find the correct document while the person's talking. So if we could just all reference the document and the page when we're raising a point, please.
That's fine.
Any other? Councillor Derbyshire.
I'm going to go back to Chip and Tar, and I just had one phone call, or a few phone calls from some people that live on the road that is Glen Oak between Park House and Glendon. So when that intersection is shut down due to an accident, which tends to happen quite a bit, that becomes the road that everyone takes. So in the wintertime, it's not that bad because there's snow, but in the summer, the dust, and they do tend to tear that road up. So they had asked, so I will ask, is there an opportunity to possibly chip and tar that road, being that it is used for a bypass during an emergency because it puts them from asphalt to chip and tar essentially, so then people go up to Park House and proceed on. A lot of people don't go the other way because then, you know, but that was just a request made by people.
I would support that, because even when Christine is closed, people need somewhere to go, so it's a bypass, and it gets one of the other gravel roads done, so there's less in the future, so. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm in favor of the concept, and I'm aware of the road, but I will also say that the county has authorized the traffic light installation at that critical intersection of Melbourne and Glendon Drive.
Right.
So hopefully, that intersection going down doesn't happen at all anymore.
Did you want to make a motion, Councillor Derbyshire, to add it to, or get a cost of it?
Yeah, like you can look at it, but I mean, I don't think it has any tile in it. I don't, like, there's no prep work done to it, so. It is something that maybe you could just look in and consider, and possibly, not this year, next year. It might maybe be if the traffic, or if the accidents still continue, then it's maybe something we think about.
Okay. Councillor Pelkman.
Maybe perhaps something that might be worth looking into is, like, I know earlier in the year, I had a complaint from someone who lived on Sutherland between Calvert and Walkers from an increased traffic from people from Strathroy leaving town. Instead of going over to the stoplight, they're cutting this way. That extra dust suppression be used in those areas, because that's primarily the issue is the dust. And the mounting, they were complaining about the mounting too.
Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a staff report depicting all of the gravel roads currently existing within Strathroy-Caradoc. And I'd also like to know of any major farming operations, such as like a cuddy farm is what I'm referring to. Not that it has to be that operator, but that type of large farm that could be impacted, because we hear these are impacted by the dust. So that's essentially what I'm getting to with that statement.
Chemo Farms?
Chemo farms, yeah, Chemo farms, sorry. So I'd like to see that put on a map for council's consideration.
Do you have a seconder to your motion? Someone to second the motion? You seconder, Councillor Hippel?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any questions? Councillor Canis?
This is a topic I'm really not very knowledgeable on, but I have heard farmers who are on gravel roads saying, please don't tar and chip my road because that will bring more people down my road. So how, you know, like, yeah, how do you make those decisions? And I assume that the people who live on there that don't really want tar and chip would have some say in it too. So so I guess how far down this road do you go? Are you better off to turn, like using Amiens as an example, into a paved road as a way of dealing with traffic, as opposed to doing more tar and chip roads in other places, right? So do you have some really good roads for heavy traffic to go down, and you leave gravel roads. So again, this is a speech to nowhere, probably what I'm giving, but you know, do we need to look at those things too?
That's good.
Yeah. Councillor Pelkman, and
Yeah, sorry, no offense, Deputy Mayor, but I have an issue with the motion in terms of what do we define as a major farming operation or not. That is so vague and so far-fetched. I don't even begin to know how you write a report on those kind of parameters. So I think if we're looking for some kind of information, I'm sure that there are points that have received multiple requests or complaints that maybe we focus only on those areas. And then if at some point in the future, we want to look at all of our gravel roads, that could be done like well after the budget process is done, or in a future year that it could be included in a different budget process. But I think trying to get that information now, I don't even know how you would begin to define what's a major and what's a minor farming operation, and what roads to look at and what not, so.
we'll get to you, Deputy Mayor. Just Councillor Brandon, I'll get to you.
Through the mayor to the director of roads, would we probably already have a map in some form that would show the location of gravel roads within our municipality?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Brennan, yes, we do.
So at least the first half of the motion can be accomplished here. We can receive that map. So I would say that I have no problem with us receiving that map.
Friendly amendment.
And then we can look at a friendly amendment.
Okay. Yep. Deputy Mayor, did you want to?
I will accept the friendly amendment from Councillor Brennan and Councillor Pelkman that we remove the second part and just we receive a map showing the gravel roads in Strathroy-Caradoc for future consideration.
Okay. Councillor Derbyshire.
I'm gonna try to complicate it. If on that map, you do know of some that are already prepped, or if none of them are prepped, that would be nice to know too. At least then that gives us some sort of priority that this is prepped, this isn't prepped, and you now know, okay, these ones are a real cost and this one isn't, right? Like, it just gives us a better idea of, if you know it, if you don't know it.
Okay, you had seconded the Deputy Mayor's original motion. Do you
Yes.
agree to the friendly amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay, now you got a question.
And then I didn't have a question. Actually, I was going to 100% agree with Councillor Derbyshire. I was going to call you Councillor Bowe. Councillor Derbyshire, because this is the problem that we ran into about 5-6 years ago. It was that there were residents, farmers on roads that were gravel that had everything prepared and they were ready to go, and they just sat there and sat there and sat there and they were done. And I like that, because there are roads that are prepped, and I don't have the right terminology, but are prepped and ready to go, and others that probably would be very costly. So I think that's a great addition to that, and I don't know if you even have to add that into the motion. I think you just kind of put it all together.
I think Director Strauss, okay. All in favor of the motion? Carried. I'm gonna ask a question of both Director Dakin and the CAO. Just looking at the financing, I know we're just, now this is preliminary, but just in terms of grants, I noticed that there are no grants listed for any of the 2024. I know we don't have any yet, but would some of these projects qualify for grants? And if so, possibly what, and possibly how much? I know that's a big question, but I think that's important for us to know.
Through the chair to the chair, I'll go first and then get corrected by the CAO. Up until when we produced this document, we didn't know what our OSIF, so that's that formula funding where we get every year for infrastructure. We didn't have that number yet. We didn't have our, used to be gas tax, but it's now the community building fund. We didn't have those numbers. So those numbers we have now. So ideally what we try and do is paint the worst picture possible. That sounds bad as far as the budget goes, and then we're constantly, so every Wednesday I receive a listing of all the grants that are available. We go through that listing, see if there's anything that we're eligible for, and then I would go to the director and say, does this fit this project? And they'll give me the yay or nay, and then we apply for those grants. So typically, we apply for grants regardless if they're listed or not, hoping to save taxation dollars, in which case when we save taxation dollars, we can put those into reserves. So that's sort of the plan on that. Just so you know, we do have those numbers now for the Community Building Fund and also the OSIF ones that will be added, so that will reduce some of the taxation as well. But sort of the one-off grants that we need to apply, those we do when the listings come up.
CAO, you can correct on that.
No, that was no correction needed. What I would like to say is, so those are sort of our, as Director Dakin said, some of our annual funding that comes. There are some one-off sort of funding opportunities, and there's two that one that just sort of was announced yesterday that came out, and then another one that we've applied for. And so if I may, perhaps Director Strauss can give an update on the one that we've applied for and the one that we are going to apply for.
Yeah, so we did apply for a grant that I believe the cap on it was $1 million for the Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facility. But there is a new grant called a Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. That's the title I got, may change. That one is for $200 million for every municipality in Ontario that qualifies, and the individual max application per municipality is $35 million. So we have two projects with the timeline coming up. I believe it was September, end of September. And so we are going to apply for both our Strathroy wastewater treatment facility and our Mount Bridges wastewater treatment facility. So we're working with a third party on that application.
CAO?
And if I may just expand on that, so the application deadline for that one is in April, and for that grant, you have to have shovels in the ground in the fall. So these are why it's so important that we have our sort of engineering studies and plans done, because the grant comes out, or the application comes out in February, and you have to have shovels in the ground in September. So that's why we'll be applying for any of the funding opportunities that come available.
Okay. Councilor Brandon.
And just to the listening audience, welcome to the vagaries of municipal financing. When some of our most important capital projects are directly affected by last-minute provincial announcements of grants that we all have to scramble for with hundreds of other municipalities across the province of Ontario. And it's something that's really gotten under my skin over the last few years. But instead of giving us a stable funding that we can use each year and plan with, which would be rational, if I knew what the provincial grants were going to be for water infrastructure for the next 10 years, it'd be a heck of a lot easier to plan a municipal budget. But what we end up getting is piecemeal, at the last minute, provincial announcements, and it doesn't depend which government is in, it's always the same. And then we then have to take up staff time at the last minute to write up these applications and send them in like lottery tickets, hoping that we're a winner. And if you're a winner, you get X number of $1 million, and if you don't get it, well, too bad for you. And there really doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason. So this is one of the things that really annoys me most about municipal budget processes, because we're basically filling out lottery tickets and hoping we get a big win with the provincial government. Anyway, that's my little rant, but it's so frustrating why we don't have a stable form of infrastructure funding. Okay, rant over, thank you.
And I just have one, I'm just trying to educate myself and everyone else, so I'm looking at just conjecture, we haven't picked anything big off of this. So just on engineering, 7.2 million in loans. Those loans would come from Infrastructure Ontario, Director?
So, through the chair to the chair, so obviously that's been our traditional way of funding because the interest rates have been very favorable. And it also is, you can get a constant interest rate for the term of the loan, and they go long on them. So I think that's been lucrative in the past. We have been having discussions with our current bank, which is the Bank of Montreal, because of our good financial situation with our reserves and stuff. They are wondering, is there room for them to get involved in our debt scene and using our reserves as sort of collateral, so we don't have to dip into reserves, using those as collateral to get a preferred rate on some of our loans. So we're carrying on those discussions as well, but historically speaking, any loans have been through either the county, which has a free loan program, very restricted, or Infrastructure Ontario.
Okay, any other questions? So as you know, the purpose of this meeting was to see if there are any hard no's. We need to give direction to staff. So far we've only made a motion to remove $200,000, but this is going to be coming back to us, but I don't, Councilor Kenneth, we haven't seen anything yet. That's a hard take this off. Councilor Kenneth, you had a question?
I think there were about 1.7 million in projects that were removed as well, right? That or deferred,
Yep.
or so that there's that 1.7 million
Yeah.
as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
And those were through the user-based, so that was environmental services, so that's the water, wastewater rates.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments? Councilor Derbyshire.
I guess it's a question, comment. Seeing what we have to do when we talk about this other list, you know, when we keep going forward, like I realize there's probably every project needs to be done, right? It's just when we get into these street constructions, that's a fair chunk of money that we're going to actually borrow. Are we going to complete these things this year? Or, you know, are we kind of going to push it to where now we're bottlenecking up some other funding? Like, do we have the opportunity to actually get this done, I guess, is my question, or are we just kind of planning for 25, 26 with this here?
Through the chair to Councillor Derbyshire, so the projects on here, we fully anticipate to have completed this year. There was many others that we had on here, but we deferred them till future years just because of that specific reason.
Sorry, just one more.
Yep, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, while doing that, we're still going to be cleaning up a bunch of these that are on our list too, you know, that to make sure that we're still hacking away at stuff so that, you know, we're not just kind of adding more to this list as we try to remove some.
Councillor Wilsey's had his hand up. So. Councillor Wilsey?
Yeah, I just actually wanted to see if there's anything on this from the asset management plan. I know we're doing a renewal, we're adding a few more things to it this year. Is there anything on this list, or does this list fully complete all the obligations we have to stay current on our asset management plan in this department?
Good question. I don't know, you or Director Date? Director Date? Dakin?
Through the chair to Councillor Wellesley, so we are still playing catch up with our asset management plan. Obviously, as we are all aware, there's about a $6 million deficit. So if we were to stay current with our asset management plan, we would need to do approximately $6 million worth of work every year. As you can see, we're budgeting 3.9 for the whole year for all of the projects, not just asset management stuff. So there's still a need, and so what we're doing is, as the finance department, we're trying to find creative ways of filling in that gaps. So we're closing the gap every year, but at some point we're either going to have to push it forward or find a creative way to fill that gap. So to answer your question, no, we're not current. We are getting closer each year because we keep pushing projects into the queue to get done. But if we were to do it, we would need about a $6 million injection annually to do that.
Yep. CEO McKibben?
I just wanted to share, just last week was the Rural Ontario Municipal Conference, the ROMA Conference, and this whole discussion on asset management and infrastructure and funding was a major point of conversation at the conference, that municipalities across the province are all in the same, that the list of infrastructure projects are continuing to grow while funding support is decreasing in some ways, and there's not the ability to sort of catch up. So certainly from like a professional standpoint, from the municipal organizations like ROMA and AMO, these are all big topics of conversations of how we can try to figure this out together. So it's a challenge.
Okay. Councillor Pelkman, then Councillor Brennan.
And I just want to remind people too that that whole concept of asset management is new. Prior to 7 years ago, it was just, these are the most important projects we have to do, and that's what you did. And my recollection is correct, the conversation was it will take us decades to be in a position where we'll be able to say that we're funding enough for our asset management plan to be self-funding. It's because right now we're having to fix and try and save at the same time, which is next to impossible to keep tax rates at a sustainable level.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Pelkman. We got to walk and chew gum at the same time. Hopefully sometime down the road we'll just have to chew gum. But yeah, given the question from Councillor Derbyshire, I want to go through the chair to our Director of Roads and ask about timing and dates and when our budget approvals need to be finished in a timely manner for you to be able to actually complete capital projects this calendar year. I mean, obviously we want to have the budget done in a thoughtful manner as soon as possible, but are there critical dates that you need to meet in terms of initiating some of these projects? Because you're going to have capital budget approval to go ahead with them. When do you need that approval by for these to happen in this calendar year?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Brennan. That's a great question. So the reconstruction projects or the construction projects that are proposed, so I'm looking at the engineering line items in the capital. So that would be the Scott Street, the Queen Street, and the Saxon Road redesign reconstruction. Those projects I basically need to have out for tender as early as in a couple weeks. That way it closes, we can review the tender, make sure they're complete, bring it to council for award. We also need to get a permit to take water because there are sewers underground for these. And those permits to take water can sometimes take up to 3 months, so that can really delay a project. And obviously, if we have a contractor waiting to go, we give them a hard deadline of when we need this completed by. The Queen Street one will be the biggest project identified on here, and that project is critical to start in May if we need to get that done before the snow flies.
Director, Councilor Brennan.
So I guess my follow-up is not so much to the director, but it's to council, is are we in a position where we need to possibly pre-approve before we approve the whole budget, 1 or 2 capital roads items, so that the director is going to be able to proceed in a timely fashion to get them done this year? I don't know when our budget process is going to be finished, but if we don't finish it in time for the director to actually meet his critical dates, then some of these critical projects could get pushed off to another calendar year. So I just put that out there for consideration.
Deputy Mayor.
Working along with that thought, Councillor Brennan, what I would like to see is at the beginning of each meeting, I would like to know where we stand. So as we're making decisions moving along and you're infilling these spreadsheets, there should be a number generated down in the bottom corner telling us what the levy is and what the potential effect on tax increases. Because without that, honestly, it becomes spinning our wheels, and we'll never be able to answer the question that you're posing, which is the same question in my mind. So I would like to see that presented, have that available and presented to council at the beginning of each budget meeting going forth, so we know exactly where we stand with both the levy and the effects on taxation to the best of their ability. I understand some of that has to be
So through the chair to Councillor, to Deputy Mayor, you have that number in front of you. We haven't changed, there's been nothing axed. In fact, today we axed 200,000, but we put 200,000 back in. So that number is in front of you right now because we haven't taken anything off yet. So your 8% increase in operation, and currently what's sitting, because we haven't done anything with capital yet, currently there's 4 million sitting in capital. So that would be your 8% right now. So you're at 8% right now on a levy increase.
and that's great. I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, so we can do that. Just on the note, and unfortunately, because I have the mic, just on the capital, the asset management plan. A good example of what we were just talking about is we just found out about $35 million worth of capital project grants that we could take advantage of, but those are all brand new projects. There is zero funding for asset management in that 35 million. What they do throw at you is 2.8 million of what we'll call OSA, that's that OSA funding. So that is the money that they're throwing at us for asset management. We got a $6 million deficit. They give us 3 million to so give us half of that money annually. So we're still half short, but they constantly throw money at brand new projects. And that's kind of where the frustration lies, I think, with most municipalities is the province wants to fund the stuff that they can cut ribbons on. They don't want to fund the stuff that's maintaining what they already have. So that's where we're at.
Okay, Councilor Brad.
So to clarify then to the Director of Finance, an 8% increase in the levy would translate to about a 5% increase in the taxes an individual is paying on their tax bill?
Through the chair to Councillor Brennan, that's correct. So about 8% levy would equate to around a 5% rate increase.
So just for a follow-up then to go to my previous comments, if we are in the territory now where we had said that we wanted to have as a goalpost 5% increase on taxes, a tax bill, if we're still within those parameters at this point, I guess I come back to the suggestion that we might want to be mindful and consider pre-approving some capital projects so that they can be bid on in a timely fashion. If it turns out that the Queen Street project is absolutely critical and it's got to be bid on by a certain date that might come sooner than the end of our budget deliberations, I think we need to take a look at having a serious talk about pre-approving some capital projects so those bids can go forward so they can be completed in this calendar year. So I'll just put that out there for the moment.
Councillor Wilsey? Excuse me.
I just wanted to point out that on the budget that we had that was presented last time, there were still blank fields for the Caradoc Housing Committee, as well as the Tri-Township Arena. And if we look at the last year's budget figures, that was an extra $1 million in operations, which would be approximately an extra 5% in addition to what was shown. Those were just blank lines. There wasn't any value put into them. So if we're going to go based on that being an accurate document, it's still missing fields that wasn't completed all the way. So I don't believe we can make any decisions based on that document, knowing that we're potentially $1 million under budgeted there, which would be an extra 5% increase instead of the 8. Would be a total of 13.
Any other comments? Councillor Pelkman?
Going back to the capital budget review, at the bottom of that is the fleet budget. Is any of that, have any discussion from Director Strauss?
Thank you. I totally skipped over that. The one thing I just wanted to let council know is I'm actually deferring the grader. I got recent pricing on a grader and nearly fell out of my chair. So that has been deferred and the number is extremely low on the pricing of graders. So that will be deferred to until next year.
Okay, because that's the one I was actually wondering about. So that's another 450,000 removed then? Because that one is it's reserves and reserve funds.
Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, and through you to Director Strauss, there was roughly $500,000 taken from a $1.2 million project that we had talked about earlier on. The was it the refurbish pumping station construction? Was that it? So there's roughly a $500,000 savings there, but is that on is that money DC charges?
No, so that's actually user fee, so that's wastewater rates.
Okay, so that's user fee, so it doesn't affect the taxation rate. Okay. And
go ahead.
so I just wanted to ask to you through Director of Finance, roughly what does 1% taxation equate to in dollars?
1% would be 198,000. So just shy of 200,000 increase.
Thank you.
Councillor Derbyshire?
Sorry, just to go back to Councillor Brennan's point where he's asking, do we want to do some of these things? I guess the biggest question would be are we approving like a loan then? Because the two major projects are a loan. They're not coming out of taxation. So I think that's probably more what we have to ask ourselves at this point. Do we need to move forward, and are we comfortable taking that $7.2 million in debt? That's essentially where we're at here if you want to move forward on what we're doing.
I think just the two major items, Councillor Derbyshire, but Councillor Canis, did you have a?
No, I totally agree with that. To me, there are two projects. Queen Street was kind of 1A and this is 1B, right? So they gotta happen, right? So and same with the water down Sexton, or that really is all. They're two pieces that unlock the whole south part of Strathroy. So they gotta happen. So maybe we need to take them, or may cut somewhere else or borrow somewhere. But to me, those are two gotta happen things. So.
Deputy Mayor?
Are those decisions we make at this meeting, or do they have to come to council like through a staff report, staff request?
I'm going to defer to the CAO. We could make a decision here and refer it to council, right? It has to go to council.
Is that what you're seeking? If so, I'll make that motion.
Through the chair, yes, it would be great that we have direction tonight in a motion, and then we can bring it forward to council for discussion.
Okay. So may I make the motion then?
You may.
That we direct staff to bring forward the, I gotta get the name of the two projects here.
Queen Street.
The Queen Street, second part. Do you want to tell me what the two projects are so I make sure I get them right, Director?
Yep. Director Strauss.
Sorry, if I may, so these are just an estimated budget that's proposed. We still have to tender the projects. So perhaps this could be a lighter discussion, and if the council is willing to move forward with those two projects, that staff can go ahead with the permit to take water, apply for that permit, and then also release the tender for public bidding. We may have higher numbers, we may have lower. I've heard in the engineering industry that costs for construction have went way up over the winter for this year. So I just, rather than
that's good.
committing the
I'll put
funding,
that in
we
the
can.
motion. So then I'll make a motion that we direct staff to, on the project for Queen Street, the continuation of the Queen Street and the south, the Saxton, what, I'm sorry, what do we call the drainage project? Is it the Saxton, no, not the Saxton Road, I thought it was a drainage problem.
Well, you want the three.
But they're together.
Yeah, one sec, CAO is gonna jump in here.
Thank you.
Through the chair, so we have a report coming forward next Monday with all sorts of information on the Strathroy Crossings drain. So that's coming forward on Monday for council's review and direction. So I didn't want council to make any decision, or to make a recommendation tonight when something's coming on Monday.
So then what the director is asking for is permission to apply for the permit to take water and release the tender for Queen Street.
And
That gives you what you're looking for?
And Saxton, correct? The two of them. And Saxton.
And Saxton,
Yes.
okay. So the motion for
Yep.
that. Okay, thank you.
You wanna read the motion back, clerk, and we'll get a second?
You just bring it forward Monday. Why don't you just bring it forward Monday?
Yeah. Okay, here.
Okay, through the chair to members, so this is the resolution I've heard, and again, open to making it more concise. But permission to, that staff be directed to apply for the permit to take water and release the tender for the Queen Street and Saxton Road projects.
That's my motion, yes.
Seconder, Councillor Kennis. Any further questions? Councillor Pelkman.
Just in sequence of events. So likely those loans that, if we did approve those projects after the tenders came, would not likely hit the books until 2025. Yeah.
Okay. Questions, motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Any further questions of Director Strauss? Okay, thank you. We'll think of something. With that, so we've received for information. Our next meeting is Monday at 3 o'clock, and I believe that's community services, correct? Mr. Lilburn? Okay. Motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor McGuire, second by Councilor Palmer.